Iran's supreme leaders made a rare acknowledgement that thousands of people have been killed in recent protests. But he's accusing the United States and Israel of being responsible for the violence. Ayatollah Ali Khamenei has called US President Donald Trump a criminal and says he will not let his country be dragged into war.
They killed several thousand people, some of them with a brutal and barbaric force. Today, the Iranian people have defeated America and Israel. We extinguished the sedition, but that's not enough. America has to respond for its crime. The various arms of our government must pursue this. We will not drag our country into war. We do not intend to drag the country into war, but we will not leave the domestic criminals either. Worse than domestic criminals are the international criminals. We will not leave them alone either. It must be pursued in its own ways.
It is still difficult to get in touch with people inside Iran. The internet and phone services have been mostly cut for more than a week. Authorities have restored access to domestic text messaging, but international calls and texts are still down. Only local websites can be accessed. The government shut down communication networks on January the 8th to stop protesters from organising. Iranian media reports at least 3,000 people involved in anti-government demonstrations have been arrested. Tehran's public prosecutor has hit back at Donald Trump as well. That's after the US president said Iran had halted 800 executions after facing pressure from Washington. Ali Salehi rejected the claim.
Trump is always saying nonsense and meaningless stuff, and it is wrong to do so. Our response is firm and swift. We are carrying out our work, and many of the cases are being introduced to the courts.
All right, for more on all this, let's bring in Al Jazeera's Ressel Serda, who's live for us in Tehran using a satellite link. And Ressel, those protesters, or the protests rather, have calmed down. We know that there were arrests, but we don't know that the trials have started. So what do we expect next?
Well, now more than 3,000 people have already been arrested, and still these arrests are continuing on daily basis. Just today, in the Kurdistan province, there have been more arrests. So the trials have not begun yet. However, the indictments, particularly in some cases for the capital, Tehran, are ready, and they already have been sent to the courts. So the officials here are saying that these trials are going to be quite swift, and some cases, particularly of those that are considered as the key figures of the protest or the leaders of the protest, are going to be open to the public. And many of them are now being accused or being charged with trying to or aiming to destroy the public order and waging a war against the state. These are serious crimes, serious accusations that anyone could face in this country. However, here, there is a dilemma for the Iranian state and officials. On one hand, if they do not take bold actions, they feel that the state will look weak, and that could encourage further protest, and that could lead further destabilization of the country. On the other hand, they have to be extremely careful to make sure that these trials, these arrests, are not further increasing or deepening the rift between the people and the state, because one of the main reasons of the problems in the country or the protests in the country is the growing rift and the gap between the state and the people. And now the officials are saying that the reconciliation of state and the people is one of the top priorities for the country. Yes, it has been almost a week that the country is relatively calm, and the protest lost momentum. In some nights, we are seeing no protests at all. However, that doesn't mean that it is over, because the main cause, the root cause of all of these problems, all of these protests that have been ongoing for decades from time to time, sometimes big and small. However, one thing that has not changed in this country, it is the economy, the living standards of the people, and the growing poverty, the economic hardships that Iranians are facing on a daily basis. And when it comes to reform the economy, when it comes to increase the living standards, the country needs the resources. And when you look at the available resources to the government, they're extremely limited.
Reza, when you refer to the protests losing momentum, one of the huge contributors to that has been that internet blackout going on for days and days now. Is there any change to that situation, an update on a timeline that the government will switch it back on?
Indeed. Now, gradually, we are seeing some of the improvements. So yesterday, the SMS services were restored. And just today, now, the government has decided to open some of the internal messaging apps. So it means that Iranians now can text to each other and also can use the Iranian-made or the domestic messaging apps. However, these domestic messaging apps are available for the person-to-person communication, but you cannot make the group calls, you cannot create the groups, you cannot share the messages, pictures, or videos on these groups. And the reason for that is that these groups could serve to organize more and more protests. So the government said that there will be a three-phase plan. In the first phase, so SMS services to be restored. In second phase, the domestic messaging apps to be opened. And now we're seeing that the second phase is partially in place. And the government said the third phase, the final phase, is going to be restoration of the internet. However, when it comes to third phase, it's still not there because the internet nationwide is still very much limited and restricted. So what can be done here is that Iranians can message each other through SMS services, can have messaging services through the internal applications. But when it comes to the international calls, international messaging systems, having access to the international websites, AIs, and other services, it is completely restricted here. So practically, there are some rooms that are available for Iranians internally to communicate, but it is still largely cut off from the rest of the world.
Reza Sirda, thank you very much, joining us live from Tehran.